Greg, and here at the Alexander Memorial Coliseum, among the many disappointments for the United States boxing team, the elimination of the U.S.'s marquee guy, Antonio Tarver, last night. And some of the coaches were critical of his style, particularly in the third round.
Well, you know, Antonio Tarver may have gotten away a little bit from that outside style power punching that he'd used so effectively. That and possibly some strange judging helped contribute to the fact that he came away with only a bronze.
Let's take a look back from last night, starting with round two.
Now, hey, Tony, they're going to know he's there. He's coming, so they run into that jab.
Antonio Tarver making his way out for round two. Al, he had been a slow starter in his previous bouts, but got off to a quicker start last night in round one.
He was used to low scores, and against Vassiliy Jirov, who, by the way, was ranked number 2 in the world, he was ahead 4-2 after the first round, so it was a typical Antonio Tarver match. And as we look at round two, especially here, I think the viewers will want to take a peek at several things, get the idea of what they think is landing, what isn't landing, and a reminder that for a punch to count, you have to land with the white knuckle portion of the glove closed to the head or torso area.
And a point is registered only when 3 of the 5 judges punch the scoring button on their score pads within 1 second.
And we remind you that Tarver and Jirov went into this round with Tarver ahead 4-2. At this juncture in the bout, Jirov, who was really much more timid coming in than many would have expected him to be. He was very impressive in his matches leading up to this one with Tarver. He had lost to Tarver 9-6 once before, and he was very timid and I think cautious of Tarver's power.
Now, when you look at the scoring here in the Olympics, obviously a blow that would snap the head back has more of a chance than a body punch or coming in from the side, which sometimes is difficult to see depending on the angle of one of the 5 judges.
Now, here Tarver getting after Jirov. And this whole flurry here, there's an uppercut, there's a left hand. Those are legal punches. That one's not a legal punch. That one's not. That right hook was. That left hand was. In this whole sequence, all of this that we're looking at, Antonio Tarver got 1 point. 1 point. See, and what the judges missed throughout this round, and then in the third round were a lot of straight left hands by Tarver. That's his ticket. That is a slip.
Well, the problem is when a boxer is throwing combinations, it's very difficult for the judge to react that quickly. And as you mentioned, the blow has to connect with the target area, front part of the body above the waist, but not including the arms or the shoulders. So some of those shots did land on the arms and the shoulders.
But I think when you look at that sequence, the problem is it's hard to imagine Tarver getting 1 point for that. And let's look at, now there's another good straight left hand on the inside. Now it's true, 3 of the 5 judges have to see it from their vantage point. But of course, let's not forget, their job is to pay attention. There's Tarver with another good straight left hand. This was a round in which, forget everything else, I think we see Jirov has done almost nothing offensively to this point.
But he did come back, as we'll see, with a strong round 3. I think the argument, and I know the boxing coaches for the U.S. were upset with the philosophy of Tarver, in particular in the third round, but the argument, I feel, is not that he lost. I think he lost. I know you may not agree with that, but the margin should have been closer.
Well, certainly closer, and as we look at the end of this round, when we come up to the third, I think it's pretty shocking what the total figures are. Here's where Tarver threw lots of punches, and many did not land. There's absolutely no question about that. But what did land was the straight left hands that he was throwing. He didn't give himself enough room here. This was not vintage Antonio Tarver, and that is probably the reason why they didn't score the punches. They are used to seeing him from the outside throwing different kind of punches, and Al Mitchell a moment ago told Antonio Tarver to get the junk on the inside, stay on the outside, use the jab, the straight left, and the hook. And
I know, Al, that Mitchell felt that Tarver spent too much time trying to knock out Jirov instead of employing the slick punch and move techniques that brought him a world championship last year in Berlin. We are at the Alexander Memorial Coliseum to see the scoring now after 2 rounds. Tarver is down by 1 with Al Bernstein. I'm Marv Albert. We are looking back at the loss suffered last night by Antonio Tarver, the 27-year-old out of Orlando, Florida, the defending world champion, the first American amateur to win the U.S. Nationals, World Champs, and Pan Am Games in the same year.
And when you look at that 9-8 score, that is where not only me, but many people would take issue. They went into that round with Tarver leading 4-2. He comes out of the round down 9-8 when he did 90% of the punching and 90% of the scoring. That second round is what cost him this bout. And then in round 3, as we look on, Jirov got much more aggressive, and you see him doing it. And Tarver, his technique went south in this round, and something else happened. He got very fatigued. Some have questioned Tarver's conditioning habits, training habits, and perhaps it came into play here.
Oh, he's exhausted. You have to wonder, how do you go into the Olympics having lack of stamina?
He got very tired. He has not had that many bouts this year also. Tarver's used to dominating bouts as well. He's bigger and physically more imposing than most of the light heavyweights. Now, Jirov here in the third round, you see he's more active. But is he more active than Tarver? There's a nice jab, but jabs traditionally have not counted here in the game.
And we're midway through the third and final round, but Jirov will have the advantage. In fact, he won on points in the third round, according to the judges. That they caution for hitting on the back of the head against Jirov. Tarver lost this final round 6-1, and he barely remained on his feet. As well,
he was tired at the end of the fight. There's no doubt about that. Now, there's a straight left hand that lands to the head of Jirov. There's a right hook. I already have 2 punches counted for Antonio Tarver within a 5-second period, and he got 1 punch in this round. I'm not trying to take up his cudgels, but I see him landing 4 or 5 punches. And it doesn't matter how hard they are if they're thrown properly. Jirov, in fact, in this round showed worse form than we have seen from him in this tournament. And you see all those cuffing punches. He did land some. There's a good straight left hand by Jirov.
I would like to see you take up someone's cudgels now.
You know, it's hard. Marv, it's not an easy thing to do, but I'll try.
And we're coming up on 30 seconds to go in this third and final round. And here you can see Tarver just hanging on, barely able to stand for the final seconds of the bout.
The fatigue of Tarver certainly a point of concern, and would have certainly been a problem for him had he gone on to the gold medal match, because clearly he was exhausted and spent here. But the perception of how tired he was and the aggressiveness of Jirov really have almost nothing to do with scoring blows. And actually, Tarver is countering him off the ropes very effectively, which is why I, among some others, have a problem with this. And make no mistake, Jirov was ranked #2 in the world, but there's a good right hook by Tarver. Now, you're going to tell me Antonio Tarver landed 1 punch totally in the third round.
You think
not possible?
You think he won this fight? Or do
Tarver
you think
absolutely won. And looking back at it in the last 2 rounds has me even more convinced that Tarver won.
So I don't agree. I think it should have been closer, but I don't think there's any argument about the scoring in this bout. But it was a victory for Jirov off Antonio Tarver. A look at the flurry in that final round.
They threw a lot of punches like this in this bout. That is part of what maybe made it tough to judge. There's a good straight left hand by Jirov. Tough one for Antonio Tarver, to be sure. He brought some of it on himself. There's no question about that.
All right, now we are set for the decision, the announcement as made last night. So it is Vassiliy Jirov advancing to the battle for the gold medal as he eliminates Antonio Tarver. Let's get back to Greg.